And now on the line is Sheila Gilheany. Sheila is the CEO of Alcohol Action Ireland and is no stranger to this programme on Near FM. Sheila, welcome back to Near FM.
And thanks very much, Darren, for having me on.
Okay, Sheila, we are recording this interview today on Friday the 10th of January and it will be broadcast on Near FM on Sunday the 12th. I got your press release yesterday. Today, Friday the 10th, is a very important and big day today in the view of Alcohol Action Ireland and many other people interested in public health, isn't it, Sheila? Can you tell our listeners about what change is happening today, Sheila, and what you think about how big of a day it is?
So, yes, we would say this is a very significant day because today is the introduction of the broadcast watershed on alcohol advertising. So from today, you won't be able to see alcohol ads on TV before 9 p.m. and there are some restrictions on radio broadcast as well. Essentially, on weekdays, you won't be able to see an alcohol ad between 3 p.m. and then 10 a.m. the following morning. So this is a very significant thing. It's part of the Public Health Alcohol Act, which was passed in 2018. And it's finally, this section of it is finally coming into operation today, more than 6 years after it was passed in the Oireachtas. So we would say the most important thing about this is that it's designed to reduce the exposure of children to alcohol advertising. And the reason why that's so important is that we know that the more advertising the children see, the more likely it is that they are A, to start to drink, and B, if they are already drinking, to drink even more. And given that we really do have a significant problem with alcohol in Ireland at all age groups, including children, but remember that's where the bulk of people who start drinking, they start in childhood. So anything at all that can help reduce those drivers towards starting to drink at a young age are really to be welcomed.
Okay, Sheila, before we talk a bit more about how big of a day today is, can you tell me, if you know, why there is a bit of a difference between the hours that's going to change on television compared to radio?
Well, that was something that I suppose the alcohol industry would have pushed for. During the 3 years when this legislation was being debated in the Oireachtas, there was enormous pressure from both the alcohol industry, but also from sections of the media industry as well, who are obviously affected by this legislation. Also, and there was a massive campaign to try and to derail it, and to dilute it where they could. And certainly, we can also see that they have really helped to delay it. But nonetheless, it's still something that's worth having, and we really do welcome it.
Yeah, I think the word watershed is very appropriate to describe this change that's coming in today, because I personally think that this change, that today marks the first day of a watershed change in how alcohol is treated in this country. Would you agree with that, Sheila?
I really, really would actually. It's setting down, a line, and it's really making it clear that it is not acceptable that children are being absolutely saturated with alcohol marketing. Now, I accept that they will still see other forms of alcohol marketing. There's lots of children who are watching TV after 9 o'clock, and even more importantly, we know that a vast amount of screen time now is actually screens in your hand. So it's internet advertising that really also needs to be looked at carefully. On top of all of that, there are other elements within the Public Health Alcohol Act that haven't yet been implemented. And we would say that they are equally important to be implemented. And the one that I'm thinking of in particular is the restrictions on alcohol advertisements on their content. So at the moment, when you see alcohol ads, they're coming down with myths, alcohol industry generated myths, things like essentially telling you that you need alcohol for a good time, associations that are drawn between things that are important to you, whether that's sport, music, social occasions, family, indeed your national identity. All of these things are used by the alcohol industry to promote their products. Now, when the section in relation to control on the content of alcohol ads comes into place, what that will do is to strip out those myths and replace it with facts. So some of those are basic facts. Where can you buy the product? How much is it? Where did it come from? But even more importantly are facts about its health impacts. So they will have to include warnings about, for example, that alcohol causes cancer, liver disease, and not drinking in pregnancy. So the Public Health Alcohol Act was a very important piece of legislation, and it was designed really to try and reduce alcohol consumption in Ireland by 20%. Now, we are seeing some progress in that. We've actually dropped by 10% since the Act came in, but we're not going to see the full benefit of it until all of those elements are in place, because they are designed to work with each other.
Okay, I was just going to ask you about, well, at the end, about what's left in the Act to be implemented. I just have, I think, two more questions about today's change. I know you mentioned the positive impact that the change today will have on children in Ireland over time, but Sheila, it won't solely be children who will benefit from this change today, won't it not?
That's a very good point, actually. And, all of us are subjected to a massive amount of alcohol marketing. And even though we all like to think, oh, I'm not influenced by it, well, we are, because indeed the industry wouldn't spend the literally billions that it spends worldwide on alcohol marketing if it didn't have an effect. So I actually think myself, not only is it very important that children are not exposed in this way, but you think of anyone who's maybe in recovery, for example, constantly being besieged with messages about alcohol and promoting it in all sorts of ways. I always feel it's a very unfair thing, on people in recovery. But beyond even that, the general population, we have very high levels of alcohol consumption here. 73% of the population would consume alcohol, and we have particularly high rates of binge drinking. That is, drinking a lot of alcohol at any one time. And that's not necessarily by people who are dependent on alcohol. It's just something that has become very common here. And we would say part of the reason for that is the saturation marketing that drives people towards that type of consumption.
Okay, Sheila, am I right in saying that there is a distinct possibility that the alcohol industry might try to get around this change that's coming in today?
Well, one thing that we've already seen with other types of restrictions in the Public Health Alcohol Act, so for example, you can't advertise on buses or on the field of play in sporting events or close to schools. And what we have seen in those locations is a proliferation of zero alcohol product marketing, which uses identical branding to the master brand. And we think that it is likely that you might see something similar in relation to that with the broadcast watershed. Now, the Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly, well over a year ago, decried this practice. He called it a cynical practice by the alcohol industry, and said that the department was looking at it. We think it is really more than time to step in and clarify the legislation or change it if needs be. In Norway, for example, where they have a complete ban on alcohol advertising, if you want to advertise a zero alcohol product, it has to have a distinctly different brand from a master brand. It can't use the same branding, and we think something similar is needed here.
Okay, I've spoken to you on the RFM a couple of times about the issue of zero alcohol products, haven't I?
Yes. And it is an issue, but that's what this industry does. It pushes and pushes and pushes on every front. Like I say, either by trying to water the legislation down, or by trying to delay it, or by trying to find workarounds. So that's what the industry does. It's up to the government, to look and say, well, what was our aim here? Our aim was to reduce the exposure of children to alcohol brand marketing and to take the appropriate action.
Okay, Sheila, it's great talking to you today. And if I'm just to come towards the end of our interview, I know you mentioned there is one or at least one outstanding part of the Act still to be implemented. Can you tell me, is that the only thing you mentioned that's left to be implemented? And can you tell me when we're likely to see the full implementation of the Act?
So there's also restrictions on advertising and publications, and that hasn't been implemented yet. In relation to the content of alcohol advertising, that's still quite some way off. So a couple of years back ago, drafting began on what these regulations would look like, and indeed in October of 2024, the Minister at that stage said that it was his priority to get that done, and he I understood it was to be done by the end of 2024, but that still hasn't appeared. Even when the regulations are published, unfortunately they have to go to the European Commission. There's a process to be gone through there, and after that it would be 3 years before it would come into effect. So, if it was commenced tomorrow, we would still be a long, long way off actually seeing it, this content regulation coming into place. And again, it is a frustration because, this is legislation that was debated comprehensively in the Dáil. There's very strong public support for it. More than 70% of the population are in favour of alcohol advertising restrictions, and yet here we are many years after the legislation being passed, and we still don't have a line of sight for when we can expect to have this.